Donnie and Dolly. The team is supported by ableauctions.ca. Closing your business? We can help.
All of today's guests, including Farhan Lalji, standing by, are brought to you by the Vancouver Giants. The G-Men take on Tri-City, the Tri-City Americans, on Saturday night at the LEC. Ron Toigo, owner of the Giants, used to own the Tri-City Americans.
Yes, he did.
Rick, I don't think you knew that. Puck drop is at 7 p.m. A reminder, the annual Teddy Bear Toss game is December 9th. Tickets are selling quickly, so get yours now. Visit vancouvergiants.com/tickets. Just before we get to Farhan, Delaney's OK Tire and Langley inbox, unsigned. As long as EP40 struggles, this team will continue to lose. He or she is talking about the Vancouver Canucks, and we'll get into what's going on with Elias Pettersson, hopefully later on in the show. From TSN, Farhan Lalji, as always on a Thursday, joining us now. How are you? I'm supposed to ask about your hat.
Well, first of all, continue to lose. The Canucks are constantly losing. Have I missed the memo? What are we talking about here? I know Petey hasn't. Petey's only averaging a point a game instead of 2 points per game. I get that, but are they continuing to lose?
Well, I guess we're not talking about this season. We're going, back a bit here. That's what I'm guessing. Okay, the hat.
Well, it's kid sport, man. I mean, I'm a big supporter of kid sport. And a couple of days ago, we kicked off the annual Give the Gift of Sport campaign, which we do over Christmas every year. So this is going to go until the end of the first week of January. So look, kids sport, I know from coaching football for as long as I've done just how much it means to a lot of kids. And football is certainly a sport that lends itself to a lot of at-risk kids that can use the financial assistance. But this isn't just about football. It impacts every sport. Harder to impact hockey because only rich guys like you, Donnie, can put their kids in hockey. And Rick, too, because I know he did that at one point. But
so did you.
But look, both of you guys know just how great of a cause kids sport is. So please, if you get a chance, $300 you can get a kid registered into a sport. Those are the grants that we give out. So please get on a kid sports website and donate.
Agreed, Farhan. I have so much old equipment. I've given some of it to Kids Sport in the past.
Yep.
It's time for another run.
Yep.
Same thing with you. And I know you've got stuff, Farhan. Okay, Avalanche over the Canucks.
I've already paid it forward.
Avalanche over the Canucks 5-2. The Canucks have lost, and you're on the bandwagon. We can tell by your earlier comment, but they have lost 3 of their last 4. Well, what are you seeing?
Well, look, I think the competition is getting a little better. I mean, we'll see what happens tomorrow night in Seattle. But the Avalanche are an elite team, and I am just right now believing this team is playing with the house's money, right? So I know there's going to be a little bit of regression. That doesn't mean I think they're all of a sudden going to fall off a cliff. They look like a team that has the ability to make the playoffs. I'm taking the time to enjoy good hockey games again. I'm taking the time to enjoy games with leverage again. So, we got to see the Canucks play the Colorado Avalanche last night in a highly entertaining, fast-paced game that got bogged down a bit in the second period with a bunch of penalties. But we got to see Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes go head-to-head. These guys are up near the top of the NHL scoring race and are going to be competing head-to-head for the Hart, or maybe the Hart, but certainly the Norris. So I'm just kind of looking at it from that perspective right now. The Canucks have started to get a little bit banged up. Thatcher Demko's been fine in some of these games, but he hasn't stood on his head. Not that he had to earlier, but there are times during the course of a season, or maybe you need that because you're dealing with injuries on the back end and what have you. But overall, I have not seen anything in this team in the last 4 games to push any sort of a panic button. We knew at some point they were going to regress a little bit. We didn't, So I'm good with what I'm seeing at this point. But with Pettersson, the person who emailed is not completely wrong in that it does look a little bit different. He's not as dynamic. He's not his 200-foot game is not as good as it was. There are goals going in against him when he's on the ice, and hopefully he can clean some things up. And if he's playing with something, hopefully that gets dealt with. But I don't see a reason to panic around what the club has done in 3 of its last 4.
We haven't talked to you since the Grey Cup. Montreal beat Winnipeg. By the way, great ratings. 8.9 million Canadians checked the game at some point, which is huge, a major increase from last year. But what does it say when a team like Montreal beats a 16-2 Toronto and then beats a great Winnipeg team? Nobody saw this. Nobody predicted this. How did it happen?
Well, I think that they got hot at the right time, and that happens in this league a lot.
Yeah.
And, when you look at, I think 6 of the last 8 Grey Cups have been won by underdogs, right? When Winnipeg won it in 2019, right, everybody was expecting Calgary to win, and then Hamilton in the Grey Cup, and, the favorite won in 21. When Winnipeg did win it, Hamilton almost pulled off the upset. When you get down to the end here, whether we know the West is better, but in the end, the East can always put one team out there that can compete or is on a run. And when you look at this team, they won their last 8 games if you include the playoffs. And I think Jason Moss really got a sense of what his team does well and what they don't do well as the season progressed. And he put them in those positions, especially Cody Fajardo, right? Like, for me personally, I have a lot of, I don't want to say angst, but I'm not overly a fan of how Cody Fajardo throws the football, his mechanics. That doesn't mean he's a poor quarterback, right? Like, the guy's a gamer. He runs well. He can make certain throws when he's not having to make them all the time. And, if you look at his completion percentage, it's gone so high because Jason understood, keep everything within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage. You're going to get yourself out of danger. You're going to keep him comfortable and confident and, and keep the attempts down. And they did that, right? And then defensively, you've got to give Noel Thorpe a lot of credit because he evolved his defense. It wasn't, they showed a lot of pressure, but they didn't always bring pressure. And they generated so many turnovers in the second half of the year and in the playoffs. So, as far as that nobody gave us a chance, blah, blah, blah. Every player, every athlete manufactures motivation. I'm not into any of that, but that team got hot at the right time. The coaches did a great job of minimizing what they don't do well and maximizing what they do well.
Well, when SFU's football program went down, that left one university football team in the Lower Mainland, and it is nice to see that they are off to the Vanier Cup. What do you think their chances against Montreal?
Well, at the start of the year, I picked UBC to win the Vanier, and I'm not backing off from that. And don't downplay the impact of 2 SFU alums who went to UBC when they canceled the SFU football program. Sam Davenport, who scored the winning touchdown in the final moments of the Hardy Cup game against Alberta, and he was making big plays for them all year. And Jarrell Cummings, the corner out of Notre Dame High School, Sam's from Langley, and those were 2 all-conference, all-Canada West players for them. So they've really helped put them over the top. So it's ironic that, one group's misery is another group's, rejoice, right? And people from SFU, our alumni, are really proudly watching those guys. And as a BC high school football person, I'm happy to see UBC doing what they're doing. But they had the best quarterback situation in Canada West with Garrick Rooker from Texas. They've got the 2 best offensive linemen in the country, right? In Benedette and Manu. Those 2 guys would have been first-round draft picks a year ago if they'd have been available in the CFL draft. They're probably going to get a cup of coffee around NFL camps at some point next year. So they are poised. They are ready. They had a bit of a blip late in the regular season when they lost a couple games, and we're all wondering what's going on. But they're playing well, and I think they're going to win this weekend. And it's good for football in BC that they can do that. And good for football in Montreal that the Owls win the Grey Cup. Big-time parade. And now U of M, for them, is in the game. And remember, Montreal is who UBC beat in 2015 when Michael O'Connor and UBC won the Vanier.
I wasn't aware of those 2 SFU players, Farhan. That's great to hear. With all you mentioned the word misery, everything that happened so negatively up on Burnaby Mountain. Okay, back to what you were just talking about there. The Grey Cup parade, very well attended. We hope to talk about that a little bit more later. But back to what Rick was talking about, like close to 9 million people at one point tuned into that Grey Cup game. On the weekend, what was up there? Was it about the entertainment? Was it about the entertainment value? Is the CFL on the rise? What's your theory?
Yeah, look, I think there's been an uptick all season. Our ratings have been up all year. We've been up in the right demos all year. So I think this was just a natural progression of that. And I think when you get the French audience as well, I think that's a factor, right? Because the folks in Quebec aren't necessarily interested when it's not Montreal, so it's an entirely different viewing audience, right? So, but our TSN numbers have been up. It's been a good season. It's been entertaining football, and hopefully it's a sign of things to come. Because you look at what's happened in the big markets. Obviously, BC and Amar Doman are doing great things, but Pierre-Carl Pelado in Montreal really turned that organization around, and MLSE starting to do the right things in Montreal with that team, and they were in Toronto, and that team was entertaining with Chad Kelly. So, I think when the big markets go, I think that certainly helps. So, it was a trend all the way across.
You can check out what Kidsport is up to, kidsportcanada.ca. Farhan, looking good in earth tones. Appreciate this.
Hey, and you know what? I'm going to the Seahawk game tonight. Listen, you and I are both Mariner fans, right? And we can't Blue Jay fans can't wrap their head around when we always say, hey, you can drive there. Well, guess what? I'm going to Seattle. I'm going to watch the Seahawks. I'm covering the Seahawks-Niners tonight. I'm going to cover the Canucks and Kraken tomorrow, and I'm going to attend the Apple Cup, Washington and Washington State on Saturday. You can do that if you live that close. No need to support the Blue Jays. Only thing missing this weekend is the Mariners because they're out of season.
A little tip, Farhan, don't bother with the outlet malls. They aren't what they used to be. That's from Ryan Henderson.
Well, and they might be a little busy this weekend.
Yeah, that's true.
We'll get some Black Friday shopping in tomorrow before the hockey game.
Good to hear. We look forward to the report next week. Thanks, Farhan. Appreciate it.
Kid sport, boys. Thanks, guys.
Yep.